Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you all for joining us today for the information session regarding the open call for expressions of interest to the iLAuNCH second round of investment. It's great to see so many registered and joined us. My name is Hunter Walkenhorst and I'm the Associate Director of Business Development and Commercialisation here at iLAuNCH. With us today, we also have our Executive Director, Darren Lovett, and our Chief Technology Officer, Dr. Joni Sietsma. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. One of the great benefits of an online session is that we don't have to let you know where the restrooms are, point out the emergency exits, or make sure that everyone has the Wi-Fi password. We're going to assume that you've got all of that already covered. Please note that your microphones will remain muted for the entire session. We do have a Q&A session scheduled at the end of the presentation where you'll be welcome to submit any questions that you might have. And if you do have a question at any other stage, please enter it via the chat function. This session is being recorded and a copy along with the slide deck will be made available to everyone who is registered. We'll also be sending out responses to the Q&A separately. I'd like to start, next slide, thanks. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connection to land, sea and community. We pay deep respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Okay, so what do we have in store for you all today? Well, with our welcome and intro behind us, our Executive Director, Darren Lovett, will provide a brief overview of the iLAuNCH Trailblazer and our current industry partners. Our Chief Technology Officer, Dr. Joni Sietsma, will highlight the 7 program areas and a number of the existing projects. And then I'll take you through the EOI process and the investment criteria before we wrap up for Q&A. I'd like to welcome and introduce our Executive Director, Mr. Darren Lovett.
Thanks, Hunter. Hello, I'm Darren Lovett. I'm the Executive Director for the iLAuNCH Trailblazer. We're not from the government and we are here to help. I'm really excited to share what the iLAuNCH Trailblazer program is about. I want to invite you to help commercialize your ideas and in so doing, build enduring partnerships between our world-class researchers and industry for ongoing success. Specifically, the iLAuNCH Trailblazer is a $180 million program building Australia's enduring space capability through the commercialization of projects, but also we have a fast-track accelerator and we're focused on skills development to build the workforce of the future. We're harnessing the joint expertise of 3 universities and 20 plus partners to deliver real capabilities within the Australian ecosystem. So how? We want to commercialize your great ideas into space hardware. We're bringing our world-class research from the University of Southern Queensland, which is leading the consortium, the Australian National University and University of South Australia to help you. But also, I really want to emphasize that we're trying to foster relationships for Australia's future competitiveness, things that will have a payoff in 3, 5, and 10 years. We're leveraged, so we are turning $50 million of government federal funding into a $180 million consortium, which typically can halve your costs while adding commercial value. We're fast, up to 3.5 years, and that equates to the timeline and needs of typical small to medium enterprises, but also many of the startups out there whose runways are short and cash burn is king. We acknowledge it's challenging. So the focus for the Trailblazers is getting the TRL level up there from 4 to 7, 8 ideally. And for us, that means space qualified. And that is a hard bar and a high barrier. We acknowledge that space qualification is quite different from other disciplines and other components, and we're really there to support that. We have a generous program. The IP is very favorable to industry, and this highlights some of the recommendations from previous advice to government about how we can transform university culture. We're very focused. We have an experienced industry leadership team that understands your needs and also works with our academic researchers. And then finally, most of you here are from the space industry, unless you're spinning in, and space is inspirational. We are using space to inspire and build the workforce of the future, and also to push forward some of those interesting projects that can accentuate and emphasize a company's competitiveness. Now, I do acknowledge that space is hard. For Australia, it's gotten somewhat harder of late with the loss of several major national projects and a cooling investment climate. What that means to iLaunch and to us is that we're now a critical feature in the Australian space ecosystem, but more importantly, recognition that our outcomes must be competitive on the international stage if we're to cement success for the long term. To support that ecosystem strategically, our thematic focus areas are shown on the left of the screen, and they'll be detailed later. Okay, next slide. Now, this is just to provide some context about the Trailblazer University program. Many of you would have heard of the Space Agency Trailblazers. This is not that. It is funded by a different department, not DISA. This is funded by the Department of Education, who are focused on transforming university culture and improving Australia's competitiveness. Interestingly, no doubt, you'll see that 370 million that they managed to pull out of the previous government's budget and was also accepted by this current government is a lot of money to transform and help improve Australia's ability to commercialise outcomes. It comes off the back of significant public consultation on university research and how to translate from lab to commercialisation. There are 6 trailblazers. We don't need to go through all of these, but I think that the only one that you'd probably be aware of if you've looked at space is the Defence Trailblazer, which has some space elements, but we are the iLaunch Trailblazer, focused mostly on space technology. Next slide. Again, for context, these are our 3 pillars. The first pillar is our core commercialization projects, which is where we'd like to see you sit. Industry-driven requirements, shifting from that low to high TRL, focused on translating technology and harnessing your commercial outcomes. We also have a space accelerator, which will be launching early next year. Look out for that. It'll be 1.8 million of total fund size going out to help those companies cross the valley of death if they've proven something on the bench or prototype and they want to get across maybe into the iLaunch program itself, but they just need that venture capital or seed funding. We're looking to invest into those partners and companies with potentially a university partner as well. And then finally, our third pillar is the future skills development, one that I am very excited about. We are developing coursework with industry input, micro-credential courses, but also space engineering degrees and space science degrees to support that. And we're also working with school-age children through One Giant Leap, and just yesterday announced through Makers Empire that we'll be partnering with the Andy Thomas Space Foundation as well to spin those concepts out into schools across Australia. Next slide. So this is just a quick snapshot of some of our approved and existing partners. Some are not up there because we're about to sign contracts with them in the next days, we hope. You'll see that there we've got some of the bigs, Boeing and Northrop Grumman, for example. We have some different entities in there, Aspen Medical, Biomedical, and typical partners that are you would have seen in the space ecosystem before, like CSIRO, but also Southern Launch, Sabre, and etc. All of them are cool. We've got some great projects. We'd love to see your company's badge up there, and we will talk about how we can get in, how you can get into this program, and ask for questions later. So I'm now going to hand over to Dr. Joni Sitzma, our CTO, and she'll take it from there.
So I want to talk to you a bit about tech. So we have 20 plus industry partners, 3 unis, almost 20 projects, and they're all divvied up into 7 streams. That's a lot of cats to herd. So our projects that we've awarded thus far, they range from as small as 1.5 million up to 16 million. I'd say by and large, the median is somewhere between 5 to 7. And we're looking for EOIs as small as a 300,000 contribution from industry, any smaller, and we don't think that that's just going to achieve the impact that we're looking for. So bring us your offers in any of these 7 streams, and we're interested in aligning against this for space and aerospace applications. Our additive manufacturing stream looks to leverage the advances in 3D printing and other additive manufacturing technologies One of our projects is electron beam melting of titanium and Inconel. So next generation tech to make hardware for space and hypersonics. But a really exciting project here is with Boeing, and it happens to be our biggest project. And that project is really focused around repairing composites. So when a composite airframe is damaged, how do you fix it? So we're going to be developing digital twins to really investigate the damage, first of all, plan the subtractive repair, because you got to remove the broken bits, design a 3D printed metallic patch and bond it back on, and then maintain an understanding of how that lives in the aircraft life cycle. This is really being enabled through our partnership with MEMCO and access to the Dassault Systems series of software. And it really makes it all happen. Our next stream is materials processing. This is stuff like fancy new materials for space applications, which we're developing with ANU, and a really exciting project, and I'm going to say it's probably my personal favorite. With NTEX, we're developing a novel radiothermal isotope. Now, I don't know if you're a space buff like me, but you might remember the Cassini probe. First when it launched, second when it came back for a flyby. There were worldwide protests because it used a radiothermal isotope generator filled with plutonium. So there's a lot of mitigation to keep the plutonium from doing bad. But you know, if the rocket blew up, plutonium is generally bad for the humans. NTEX has developed a really interesting material that is basically safe for human and biological life. And because of that, should have a much easier way to market from a regulatory perspective. We're going to the moon, baby. The actual big outcome of this is perfect for lunar rovers, both keeping them warm in the 14 days of lunar night, as well as making electricity for them. So we hope in the next decade that this material will make it to the moon. In our hypersonics and flight diagnostics stream, we leverage a lot of the capability that's been developed in the 3 universities. We have a hypersonic wind tunnel, as well as a lot of researchers who have focused on hypersonics. Australia as a country really stands out in its hypersonics research, and we're looking to further develop that. Then we have 2 closely related streams. On one step, we need to make the rockets, and on the other hand, we need to launch the rockets. The rocket manufacturing stream is really focused on the materials and manufacturing technologies to put together rockets, and rockets that don't explode, ideally. And then on the rocket launch, this is more on the facilities, infrastructure, range safety, planning, and all the things you need to do when you want to launch into space. So please bring us your offers here, because these are 2 streams that we are interested in filling as a priority. Our satellite and communication stream is really exciting. We're going to be qualifying Australia's largest satellite with space machines. That is going to fly into orbit probably early next year. So really exciting stuff. In addition to that, we're developing space imaging systems for fire detections. It's fire season in Australia, and soon we're going to have the ability to send up our own hardware to look after our own problems. And then the last one is advanced technologies. It's a bit of a catch-all, but let me tell you what, there is a lot of really exciting and impactful research and technology out there in the space and airspace technologies. Bring us something interesting, and we will absolutely consider it. Now I'm going to pass it on to Hunter, and he's going to run you through a bit more of the EOI process.
Thanks, Joni. It's been great seeing the first round of projects come together and kick off over the last 6 months, and we're really looking forward to seeing just what can be achieved with this second round, which is a great segue into our next series of slides. And the reason that you're all here, the open call for expressions of interest for the remaining funding to foster the creation and commercialisation of space and aerospace-related research and innovation in Australia. The EOI has been open for a couple of weeks, having opened on October the 6th, and is going to be closing midnight Monday, the 20th of November. Now, before someone jumps onto the Q&A and says, hey, is Midnight Monday the start of Monday or the end of Monday? We're going to roll with the end of Monday. So you've got just a little bit of extra time in case you thought it was between Sunday and Monday. Next slide, thank you. All right, let's run through the key eligibility requirements for this EOI. So these projects have to be team-driven. The proposals have to be developed and led by an industry partner who has an ABN or an ACN based in Australia. The lead industry partner does not have to be a member of iLAuNCH. However, collaborative projects involving one or more iLAuNCH industry partners are highly encouraged. The project teams are to be comprised of at least one industry and one research organisation. It's expected that one of the iLAuNCH research organisations, Australian National University, University of South Australia, or the University of Southern Queensland, will be a member of the project team. Now, if you're having trouble identifying a research partner, get in contact with the iLAuNCH team because we can assist in finding appropriate capabilities at our partner universities. International companies are also potentially eligible to be on the project, but they must have a local industry partner, or they need to be planning to develop significant local capabilities and utilise Australian-made technology in their supply chain. We're encouraging projects that include a clear end-use customer as part of the project team as well. iLAuNCH is specifically looking to support projects that will tangibly build IP from prototypes into products and enhance capabilities to mature technical and market opportunities for the industry project partner, thereby improving the technical investment readiness levels. The project outcomes need to relate to the 7 project topics that Joni went through earlier: additive manufacturing, materials and processing, hypersonics and flight diagnostics, rocket manufacturing, rocket launch, satellites, communications and sensors, and advanced technologies. We will consider projects that fall outside these research topics, but they need to demonstrate value for money and clear end user needs. Next slide, thanks, Sean. So, the submission. Many of you will have already downloaded the template from our website. If you jump on there, you'll see a number of different links pointing the way. There are 2 parts to the template. The first is the project concept. Here, you'll throw in your summary, the aims and objectives, the problem statement, strategic alignment, the utilisation, and the impact of the project. The second component is the project schedule, which will involve highlighting the team, the activities to be undertaken, the strategy and methodology being utilised, the milestones and deliverables, identified risks, intellectual property, and the resources required. You can submit this application via 2 ways. You can either go online at iLAuNCH space, you fill out the form, or you can email your applications to ilaunch@unisq.edu.au. Next slide. The process for assessment and approval, once you've submitted, will be that all of the expressions of interest are going to be assessed against the iLAuNCH investment criteria by a selection committee. That selection committee will comprise people from the iLAuNCH exec team, the advisory panel, and a range of industry experts. Those assessed EOIs will be reviewed by the iLAuNCH executive team with some recommendations made, and those recommendations will then be approved by the iLAuNCH executive director and the program delegates. Now, one thing that may happen, it's highly probable that we may get EOIs that are very similar in nature, and we may go back to those parties and asking them to consider if they can collaborate on a single project. Next slide, thank you. So what are we looking for? Next slide, thanks. We have, with the expression of interest for core commercialisation projects, we're going to assess these against 5 key criteria: strategic alignment, impacts, utilisation, research, and project management. Next slide, thanks. The first investment criteria is strategic alignment. You're going to need to describe the relevance of the proposed project to the objectives of iLAuNCH and your technology roadmap. We need to see that it meets well-defined industry and end-user needs, and it has strategic outcomes that align with the iLAuNCH program objectives and values. And just to go over that again, iLAuNCH, the vision of iLAuNCH is to build Australia's sovereign space capability by addressing critical gaps and accelerating the development of a space technology sector. And we have 4 key objectives that are: we're providing research commercialisation through the translation of IP for Australian sovereign capabilities in advanced technologies. We're accelerating the transformation of this early stage or low to mid TRL to a launch-ready manufacturing ecosystem with supporting supply chain. We're creating a space commercialisation model that supports the current activities and creates a legacy well beyond the 4 years of iLAuNCH. Finally, we're co-designing with industry pathways for industry skill development through school and higher education initiatives. Next slide, thank you. The second criteria is centred on project impact. We'll describe how the project is going to impact the customer and or industry group who most experience the problem that the project intends to address. Strong responses here are going to highlight the development of new ideas and processes with clear benefits to the end users. We'll have a clearly identified use case and strategies to achieve the impact on the space industry and economic growth. We'll demonstrate impact in regional area Australia. And this could include working with regional partners and suppliers or potentially creating established regional facility. It's highly desirable if we can take what's been put forward and look to scale up to international supply chains, where one of the key outcomes is that we're not wanting everything to be focused internally, but ideally for Australia to have a strong sector, we need to be able to service an international market. Next slide, thank you. Criteria 3 concerns utilisation. How will the end user or industry partner exploit or utilise the outcomes or deliverables from this project? What's going to give you the best chance of success here? Well, you need clearly defined industry technology roadmap and an achievable TRL of 7 at the end of the project. We want defined commercialisation pathways, including any stage gates. So again, have a clear industry end user, clear commercialisation pathway, and bring in technology at a TRL 3 or 4 with the aim to progress it to TRL 7 and beyond. Next slide, thanks. The 4th criteria focuses on research and innovation. Provide a brief statement to indicate why the team that you've identified has the capability and capacity for undertaking the research. We want to see you bringing together high-quality research teams, have high-quality science outcomes as objectives, and ultimately build the advanced technology workforce for Australia's aerospace future. Now, we appreciate that there might be some gaps in those teams at the moment, and that's perfectly okay. Highlight those gaps. Let us know what they are. We'll work with you to see if we can fill those. So strong applications here are going to have strong project teams from both the university and the industry partner. This should not be just a university research team going off and doing their own thing. We want to see collaboration between university and industry and build those relationships. We'd like to see that the project team has all the capability and expertise needed to deliver the project. And for those really large, complex projects, there's an expectation that you'll need more than one university involved. So please, if you can, bring in other universities. Next slide. The final criteria assessment is project management. So here, you need to outline the research plan, demonstrate the strategy is adequately developed, well integrated, feasible, and appropriate for the aims of the project. Develop a timeline for the completion of the project milestones. Identify the risks to project success. The highest ranking applications here are going to demonstrate a clear and strong alignment between the proposed budget to support the achievements of the milestones and deliverables. It's going to have a well-outlined timeline, and the deliverables will be realistic and achievable, and that the budget ultimately represents good value and significant industry and university contributions. Next slide. So what are the funding arrangements that we put in place for successful projects? So the industry partner co-investment in the project is required in the form of cash or in kind. And on that contribution and co-investment, iLAuNCH will double the industry funding at a ratio of $1 from industry, 50 cents from the iLAuNCH funding, and 50 cents from our university partner. The minimum industry co-investment required is $100,000 a year, or $300 across a 3-year project, And this can be a combination of industry cash and or in-kind. The project funds are expected to be allocated to the research partner to undertake the research and innovation activities and or project required activities. In-kind contributions from all project parties are accepted and will be taken into overall funding contribution. And the co-investment from iLAuNCH must deliver benefits to the Australian aerospace, manufacturing and advanced technology industries. Thank you. Next slide. We've all had, probably all have war stories about IP in some of the situations that have come out of research. And we want you to know that we are not taking on a one-size-fits-all solution with our IP. Each project has unique factors that influence how IP is best licensed and ultimately commercialised. We want to ensure that project IP has the best chance for successful commercialisation. So we're going to work with the project partners to determine structures that align with their business models and ultimately benefit everybody. Next slide. So next steps. Many of you have already discussed your project and challenges with us, and you've explored the potential collaboration opportunities. If you haven't yet, please get in touch with us so that we can assist with that progress. And finally, we'll submit the proposal on the 20th of November. Next slide, thank you. Okay. So that brings the presentation to an end, but we now have time for some questions. Just a reminder, you are all muted, so if you do have a question, please enter it into the chat. I'd like to also draw your attention to the best way of contacting us is via the iLaunch@unisq.edu.au email address.
Okay, thank you, Hunter. And I just want to conclude and open it up for questions. But I know a lot of you are looking at this program. There are other programs out there that can offer you potential sources of funding. But I just want to emphasize again, this is not just an activity just to sort of translate federal money into your investment areas, but also to build that partnership. And that is where the true value of this program will come once we've worked with you to bring you together, open those relationships, open those meetings, the dialogues, the ongoing working through milestones, I think is where the real payoff will occur. So I encourage you to put your questions into chat and we'll deal with them as they come through. Thank you.
So we just had a question come in. Is the following configuration possible? International uni, Australian university, and so I think the answer to that is in general yes. But noting that with the funds, it has to be expended with our 3 Australian universities. Looking at the second question.
Joni, I might actually jump in there as well, and it might just be a cut and paste area, but one of the things I noticed in that question is it was only universities. It didn't mention an industry partner.
Yeah.
You must have an industry partner. These projects are not just research-based between research institutions. You must have an industry partner and a domestic industry partner.
I'll go back to that space versus aerospace, and I will say that we are going to judge them based on their merit. We have spoken a lot about space, but we are certainly open to aerospace. Next question is
Joni, I'll just jump into if you want to remain anonymous, you can send your chat text to Joni directly, and she'll field it from there.
Next question, is there a maximum project size? I'm going to say there's not a maximum, but if you think about risk management in terms of program management, as programs get large, there becomes a risk of them not achieving their objectives by nature of their size. And we will certainly consider that for very large programs. I'm reading the next one. So CSIRO is a collaborator in iLaunch, but what we would say is that the core commercialization projects are fundamentally between an industry partner and our 3 universities. Next question is multiple EOIs or single EOI. I think the correct answer to that is that from each industry partner, we would prefer to have a single EOI, but we may respond to the different topics separately. Particularly if you have multiple universities, I think it makes sense to split up the funding between the three of them. Okay, next one.
Joni, just also on the CSIRO one, if you want to go back, I think part of the question was if CSIRO is a partner, can the facility be used? And I guess we have, if you want to talk to that as well.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I didn't read it. I was trying to go through fast. So particularly, that's a facet of iLAuNCH. So in iLAuNCH, we are upgrading some of their additive manufacturing facilities, as well as developing a mobile command center for rocket launch. And fundamentally, we want to enable iLAuNCH partners to access these facilities. And I can say that it is going to be under favorable circumstances. So the answer is yes to that. So answering Annie's question, I'd say we are going to have to really look at the devils in the details. You know, going to, does this bring value for money for the program? And looking at our other criteria. Domestic partners. So if you have an ABN in Australia, then you are a domestic company. So that applies to Raytheon Australia. Clearly, we have Boeing Australia and Northrop Australia involved in our program. Should the industry partners. I'm assuming Lorenzo is a researcher. I'm going to say that I'm happy to chat with you and see if I can see where your technology would slot in to a potential industry. But ultimately, for the researchers, you have to know where your technology is likely to be commercialized to make a partnership with industry. So back to Greg Lindsay asking about CSIRO and Swinburne. So iLAuNCH is only the 3 universities. I'm happy to bring you in contact with folks at CSIRO, but if you're not working with the 3 universities as a part of the program, I'd say that's probably not going to fit within our core commercialization portfolio. General manufacturing. So really what we see a lot of opportunity out there is what we call space and aerospace spin-ins. So that's where you're a domestic ground-based manufacturing, say for mining or other applications like that. And yet you've got a bit of secret sauce that you say, man, that could be pretty useful in space or in aerospace. So that's really what we're looking to see if you're a traditional manufacturer. And again, have a chat with us and maybe we could line something up there. Hunter, can I pass it over to you to talk about what in-kind investment is accepted?
You certainly can. Look, at the end of the day, if you as the industry partner or one of the research partners are using resource in order to undertake this research, we would regard that as being in-kind investment. What we do need, though, is it has to be auditable. You'll need to have a financial statement to demonstrate just what the value of that contribution is. So that may be staff and salaries. That could be access to facilities. That might be intellectual property that is brought in. It can be quite a wide range. We are really fortunate in that the Department of Education has been quite open to allowing us to include probably a more broad range of in-kind than would generally be with your traditional research grants.
Okay, next question from Sarah Blackman. And this is prescient. As I look out across the valley and I see a lot of smoke and my throat's real itchy. emergency services are really important to Australia. And what I can say is if we can make your project align against fixing Australian problems on the dirt through assets in the sky, or as we say, space and aerospace technologies, that sounds like a win. Next one is, so again, yes, financially bring us a plan that's value for dollar. What does not seem like value per dollar is where every last dime goes to the industry partner and leaves the academics out in the cold. So we're really looking on developing partnerships here, and we're going to evaluate each financial plan on a case-by-case basis.
I'm sure there's probably a number of other questions that people have, but they might prefer to have them in a more closed forum. Don't hesitate to reach out to us via the contact details that are on the final page of the slide, or via iLaunch@unisq.edu.au. Well, thank you, everyone. Look, we appreciate you.
Hunter, there is one question.
Another section? I'm sorry.
So what really makes sense is if you submit a proposal and there's an unpalatable bit in it, surrounded by goodness, we need to be able to come back to you and talk to you about that. And I think you can try and expect us to be a bit human in that respect, that this is a bit of a dialogue, and as we had mentioned before, if we see a couple people that are lining up, and we'd like to be able to suggest a strategic partnership. So don't think you're going to get cut out just because there's one thing that is bad.
We do want to
I want to just emphasize that, Joni, you know, we're asking you to put your best foot forward, but acknowledge that not all of you know where you want to go or potentially who you might have as a researcher. Some of you have worked with us for some months and are quite mature in your proposals, and that will certainly be a positive. But we don't want to exclude anyone either. This is an expression of interest. We do want to close out this round of funding. You know, the clock is ticking, but we will work with you to pursue great ideas in order to make the program viable. It's not an RFT. It's not an RFP. We're looking for that strong interest right now. Thanks.
So there's a question about CapEx, and the short answer is yes, with the caveats that it needs to fit within the selection criteria. So from Sarah, I think you're saying if we are already linked into, one consideration when we play with other federal programs is that according to the rules of grants in Australia, you cannot double dip. So if you're on another program that is federal money, that cannot, generally speaking, be leveraged against iLaunch. Although please come and talk to us about what is the exact situation, because it's always the devil's in the details. The best question is, how long will the evaluation process take? I think you can appreciate there's quite a few people on the call. If we get one EOI from each of them, that is going to take a bit of time to get through. We're going to make every single effort to absolutely get back to you as soon as possible. For certain, before Christmas, we aim to have approached the people that we are going to down select into, but it's really going to depend on exactly how many submissions we receive.
Yeah, we promise not to take a year.
Okay.
Steps after the EOI. I think Hunter spoke through the process, but I'll just reiterate that it is going to go through a selection committee. So we've got to review them. down select, and then bring it forth to Darren. So if you look at that slide a few ones back.
And within that cycle, the opportunity to talk to you or refine, and also, we have some industry partners on that selection committee. So it's not just us internally. We have a range of criteria that we're looking at. Some of them will focus on the technical merit, but others will also focus on things such as, strategic alignment with the program and university partnering.
And of course, if you are selected, if your expression of interest is successful, we'll then move to enter into a contracting phase. We'll work with you to make sure that the project agreement is fleshed out and put in place so that you can get your project underway as quickly as possible.
The question of how many EOIs, I think that's how long is a ball of string. We have the remaining funds available to iLAuNCH, and as Darren mentioned, we are aiming to allocate the remainder of it. And I think that's going to depend on what comes in on the EOI. I knew that question was next. It is in excess of 15 million. The number is pending the signatures on all of our existing projects, so that's a little bit to be determined. So what the EOI actually is it's the start of the project documentation. So the idea here is you're coming to us with a good idea of a plan. The better developed it is, the closer it is to moving towards a contract. If you bring us something that is 100% ready and you have not made any mistakes in your budget, then it'll go straight through the contracting process as is. Realistically speaking, there will be a little bit of back and forth as we work out some details.
Okay, if we don't have any further questions, look, thank you everyone. We appreciate you being here. Remember, the expression of interest closes on the 20th of November at midnight. If you do have further questions, please contact us firstly through our iLAuNCH email, iLaunch@unisq.edu.au, and then you can also reach out directly to Joni, myself, Darren, and then the other members that are listed up on the Contact Us site there. Thanks again for joining us. We look forward to receiving your expressions of interest.